tell.
Isn't it good, Michael?
It has Sony Award written all over it. It really does.
Are you willing to give us an impromptu Mandela?
Oh, absolutely.
Apparently he's a heavy pencil for Ron Howard's biopic of Mandela next year.
That would be extraordinary, if you had to black up to play Mandela.
Never having tried it before, I would like to launch into it.
Yes.
In fact, it's reminded me of there is a game called Kamikaze Impressions.
Right.
Which usually involves alcohol in some measure, where you have to just point to someone and just say the name of someone, and they have to immediately launch into an impersonation, a full
Right, wow,
impersonation.
that's tough.
And not just sort of describing the person, they have to really try and do it. So I have to imagine that I'm playing that, and that you've pointed at me and you say Nelson.
Okay, so here we go. Mandela.
And welcome to Africa.
Welcome to Africa. Welcome to Africa. Extraordinary. It's a good job they write scripts for you actors. Goodness me, no wonder you need Peter Morgan. Well, why don't you... Okay, well, this sounds like a great game, so why don't fire one back at Rufus?
Okay. Yul Brynner.
I want to go away. I don't want to live here anymore.
What are you talking about? Who was that?
I don't know what
Yul Brynner was in The King and I.
Oh, that's right. Well, didn't he sound quite grand? Wasn't it all of that? No?
This is an extraordinary Christmas period. Play this game instantly. Well, you have to fire one right back.
Yeah, you ready?
Michael?
Jerry Seinfeld, Steve.
Not to me, I can't do it. I can't play this game.
Yes, you can.
Oh dear. What is it about airplanes, eh? Aren't they it's a nightmare, isn't it? What's the pilot up to flying the plane, eh? And the food's a bit tiny, isn't it? All the tiny bit of food you get there. And what's going on in the toilets in there? They're tiny as well.
Can I just mention that also I found out last night that apparently Gordon Strachan does a mean Woody Allen impersonation.
Really?
Now there's two names you wouldn't
expect
together.
to see.
Yeah.
Really? Please, no, this is me, my Woody with no words. Just, no.
Mr. Ben.
Okay, let's fire one at Sammy. Rufus, give Sammy one.
Sammy, quickly to the mic. David Icke.
David Icke! That's the woman, she's 21 years old. David Icke hasn't been on television since Wogan had his TV show.
Sean Connery.
No, give her a woman.
Kylie Minogue.
Oh no, I can't do an Australian accent. G'day, I'm tiny and very small. I can't do an Australian accent.
Was that Dan?
South African, but I can't do Australian.
Okay, who would you like to do?
Nobody. I can't impersonate. I can only do my own accent in a very poor South African.
Well, do your Mandela.
I can't do Mandela. I can't do this.
Oh, you're fired.
I'm
Get
sorry.
out.
I can do charades. I'm very good at charades.
There's
but
no
not
time.
impersonations.
There's no time.
I don't think charades works on the radio either.
What started as a wonderful, if self-indulgent game has just descended into radio chaos. Thankfully, it's pre-recorded, and so somehow it doesn't really count. You know what I mean? You don't feel like, who cares? If you're listening, more fool you. Anyway, we have to get musical choices from all the gang, and there's not much time left. We've only got an hour or so of more self-indulgent rubbish. So quickly, Harry, a musical choice.
Mine. My album of the year was by BC Camplight, as I'm sure I mentioned before. It sank really without a trace. It got a bit of an image problem. You know the episode of The Simpsons where Michael Jackson comes to Springfield, but really it's a big fat mental patient.
Yes.
He looks like that big fat mental patient.
What, BC Camplight?
Yeah,
Right.
but oddly enough, he did actually suffer mental problems, and the album he wrote, he was inspired to go back into the mental homes and the asylums and whatever and talk to people and get interviews and anecdotes, and he worked up this album from it. It sounds a bit bleak, but the album's joyous and wonderful, and this track is called Suffer for Two.
One of my albums of the year, Boys and Girls in America. I don't think that's a controversial choice. And The Whole Steady, of course, with Massive Nights. The album released in January. And Michael, you've been out of the country, is that right?
I have. I've been. I haven't been in Britain since sort of the end of last January, and I got back a couple of days ago.
So you've missed out on a lot of the hot new British music.
Yeah, A Brotherhood of Man, quite big still.
Still big, still huge. So I think Christmas #1.
Great.
Yes,
great.
and much deserved.
I bought a very popular music magazine on my way back.
You can name it.
Oh, Q magazine.
Yes. Others are available.
Yeah, to read on the plane on the way back, and I was shocked by how many things, bands and people I've just simply not heard of.
Right, so when we got you in there as a champion of new music, we've made a terrible mistake.
An awful mistake, yeah.
I should just, if you just joined us, welcome along to Merchant, and we are talking to Michael Sheen. Well, the usual mob are here. Don't worry, we'll come to them again shortly. But Michael Sheen has very graciously agreed to come in and choose some tunes for us. Before we talk about your next musical choice, you, as we know, played David Frost in the stage version, and you've just made the film version of Frost Nixon, which I'm looking forward to enormously. I should just point out, if you're not familiar with the story, this is of course about the famous clash between David Frost and Richard Nixon. Was it the late 70s?
In 77.
77, when after Nixon's fall from grace, Frost managed to sort of secure an interview with him, and it was a sort of strange and kind of exciting, dramatic meeting between the two. And he's the sort of first guy, I guess, to kind of get a confession of sorts, or at least to sort of have Nixon acknowledge some
kind of admission of guilt or an apology or anything like that.
If you don't know who Richard Nixon is or why he fell from grace, then just you're an idiot. Anyway, so you've made the film version. Directed by Ron Howard.
Little Ronnie Howard.
Little Ronnie Howard. Is he a tiny man?
He's a Diddy man, yeah. No, he's not Diddy. But
Can I just ask, the baseball cap's not fooling anyone, is it?
No.
I mean, when you wear a baseball cap to the Oscars, all right, I think we've sussed what's going on under there, Ron.
Yeah, but what it's really shocking because his face is so familiar from Happy Days and all the rest of it, and so that face, and his face still looks really young, and then he takes his baseball cap off, and there's just complete baldness, and it's quite disturbing.
Yes. Is it disturbing?
It's disturbing to see it.
You're happy to say on the wireless that it's disturbing when Ron Howard takes his hat off.
Yeah, I all the way through filming, I was filming it for a long time. Whenever he took his baseball hat on, but took it off, a small eek would come out, and I used to be able to keep it in my throat. But early on, it would just come fully out.
And would you find yourself perhaps doing a particularly dramatic scene, and Ron would just be off camera, perhaps in your eye line, he'd take his hat off, the sun would glint from it, you'd have to say, sorry, can we stop the take there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't
I'm feeling queasy.
But also, the other thing about Ron is that he's the only director I've ever met who is quite happy to talk about his early work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, quite more than happy to talk about Happy Days and
that's good. That's
talk
really
about
nice.
Henry Winkler.
Yeah,
and all that.
Does he have fond stories of Henry?
Yeah, very fond stories. He's
fond stories.
Yeah. Henry Winkler is now, coincidentally, the head of the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences Actors Branch.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's basically like my shop steward.
Wow, and yet currently appearing in Panto.
Absolutely.
I believe. Can we find out where?
Wimbledon.
In Wimbledon, that's right.
Yeah.
Wow, well, that's some dynamite Winkler information. Did you go to the Oscars, by the way?
I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Now, here's a question I don't know if you can confirm this or deny this, but obviously famously at the Oscars, when you get up from your seat, someone comes in and sits in your seat, don't they? And takes your place so that when you see it on TV, it doesn't look empty. Now, someone told me that prior to the Oscar ceremony itself, they why you should know this, I don't know, but they have a massive dress rehearsal where the stars themselves, George Clooney or whoever, who are giving out prizes, have people who later become those sitters, those stand-ins, who have to kind of sit in the audience. So George Clooney comes on and says, tonight we're going to give the prize to X. And so they can get all the camera shots ready and everything. And then that person who will be sitting in the seat later comes up and pretends to be the winner and gets to give a little speech and everything and do the whole thing. And they go through the whole ceremony. There's all these. I mean, it strikes me as an amazing documentary.
That would be great.
To see.
In a slightly related story, a really good friend of mine who I was at drama school with, called Julian, who's now a film director, had made his first ever feature film, little small film. And it was entered into a festival in Italy. And he happened to be walking past the cinema whilst they were doing the rehearsal, and they heard him. He overheard them announcing who had won the award.
Right.
And they said his name, and he was outside just going to the loo, and he thought, "Oh my God, I've won!" But he had to keep it quiet because it was a surprise. And so the next day, when he was at the actual ceremony, they announced the winner, and it wasn't him. They were just using his name for the rehearsal.
Oh no!
Isn't that awful?
That's terrible. Maybe if he made a better film.
Maybe. Maybe.
That's extraordinary. Well, we'll talk. I'd be interested to find out what your experience of the Oscars was, because I think it's something that few of us have been to. But before that, let's have another of your musical choices of the year.
Okay.
Perhaps in the style of Tony Blair. How would Tony Blair choose to announce this tune?
Well, this is my bumps, my lovely lady. No, this is The Pretender by the Foo Fighters. from the album that came out this year. I think it's the first song on the album, and I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan. Dave Grohl is great. Apparently Dave Grohl was maybe going to be the drummer for Led Zeppelin in the reunion.
Oh, yes, that was
but
not
it never
too far.
happened. Yeah, but this is a great album and a great song.
Foo Fighters, of course, and The Pretender on the Steve Show, BBC Six Music, with me, Steve Merchant, and we were listening to a choice from Michael Sheen, who's our guest here, and he's choosing his tracks of the years. And also, we're just chatting about your forthcoming film role, directed by Ron Howard as David Frost. Howard, as I say, very interested to know how he works. He's a very successful Hollywood director. The whole experience a joy?
An absolute joy. He's famously like one of the nicest people in Hollywood, and he really is. And he's been famous since he was about 6.
Yes.
So he should be more messed up than Michael Jackson.
Yes.
But he's the most down-to-earth guy in the world. Brilliant.
Was making the film a highlight of the year for you?
It definitely was. I think my highlight from within the film was a scene that we had to... It was all shot in Los Angeles. So we had to do a little shoot at Universal Studios. Mm-hmm. And I was hoping to, when you were there, they all, there's the tours that go around.
You could have a ride and everything.
And as you're riding around in the tour, they always say, maybe we'll see some actors filming. And they'll wave to us.
Yes.
I was hoping I could wave to people.
Sure.
But it was too early in the morning. But we did this one scene where that is set in LWT canteen from the 70s.
Yes.
So they had to recreate LWT's canteen from the 70s in a studio in Universal,
Los Angeles,
baking heat outside. And I walked into the set that day to be confronted by pictures of Reg Varney on the wall. There's nothing more surreal than seeing Dickie Davis, a young Dickie Davis on the wall, Reg Varney from On the Buses, and Doctor at Large.
Yeah.
And surrounded by extras all from LA, walking along the line for the canteen, and they're serving mushy peas and all this kind of stuff. And I hear these extras next to me as I'm doing the scene, going, could I get fries with that? Suddenly very, very not right.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So that was one of my...
And one of them, one of the extras there just doing his Blakey impression.
I'll get you back.
I'll get you back.
Yeah.
I actually, when I take my glasses off, I resemble Blakey.
Do you really?
Yeah, this is not on-air gold. I'll get you, butler. I'll get you. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Look forward to that maybe on a forthcoming chat show appearance. I'll will that one out when it's particularly dull. And where'd you find a picture of Reg Varney in Hollywood? I don't imagine they're lying around.
I just stood there and clapped the
Yes.
production designer.
Yeah.
Because he was American, this guy, and he somehow came up with a picture of Reg Varney. And then I said to Ron Howard, when we do this scene at this table, could we move the Reg Varney picture so it's behind me, so
Yes,
it's in the
so
film?
it's there.
So if dear listeners, you go and see this movie, look out for the scene where there's a giant picture of Reg Varney.
Reg Varney in the background.
Little known fact about Reg Varney, he was actually the first man in Britain to use a cash point machine. He was, remember, when they get celebrities to kind of launch various products, Reg Varney was the first man, and there he was with the camera crews around him, putting his card in, getting £5 out.
Extraordinary.
Waving. Yeah, Reg Varney.
What my Reg Varney fact is the fact that, and it's extraordinary, we've got this much Reg Varney information. For those of you too young to remember, I don't know, Sam, if you remember Reg Varney, but he was in On the Buses, and the movie version of, I think it was probably the original On the Buses, which I think came out in 1972, was the biggest film of the year that year in Britain. It made more money than Diamonds Are Forever, the James Bond film of that year, which made, in 1972, Reg Varney more popular than Sean Connery.
Was there ever talk of a James Bond On the Buses hybrid?
That would have been
film
fantastic.
made?
That would have been. It would be great to finally see Reg in the sack with
and
a beauty.
and a Bond villain going, I'll get you, Bondy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll get you,
Bondy. Yeah,
that would be quite
That
cool.
would be great. We were going to talk briefly as well about your experience at the Oscars, because I
yes.
suspect, I've been to a couple of high-class dues. Were you just a guest?
I was a guest. I was part of the Queen entourage, but which meant that I got to sit with all the glam people. It is the single most glamorous thing I've ever gone to. Even when you go to quite glamorous